welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at how data analytics and visualization are transforming the world of learning.
Ooh, that sounds pretty interesting.
It is. We're diving into Chapter 9 of this book on tech and education trends.
Okay.
And honestly, you're not going to believe some of the stuff in here, like student activity streams.
Student activity stream.
Yeah, kind of like, a social media feed, but for learning.
Oh, okay.
And get this, we'll also be looking at how AI could help us personalize education.
Ah, yeah, I can see where this is going.
Like in ways we never even thought possible before.
Yeah, so where do we even begin with this?
Well, it all starts with the sheer amount of data. I mean, think about it. Every click, every quiz, every single interaction online.
It's a lot, yeah.
It's a gold mine of insights.
If you know how to mine it.
Exactly. And the book actually talks about two main approaches.
Okay.
Educational data mining and learning analytics.
So what's the difference?
Well, educational data mining. That comes from adaptive learning technology, right?
Right.
It's about making these like automatic adjustments
Uh-huh.
and predicting things like your next best learning activity.
Okay.
Whereas learning analytics, that's more big picture.
How so?
Well, it uses data to help teachers and students make better decisions.
Oh, about their learning.
Exactly.
So it's less about like the algorithm says do this next and more about like
Yeah.
understanding the whole journey, right?
Yes. And supporting you along the way.
Okay, so then how does machine learning fit into all of this?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting. Imagine being able to predict which students might be at risk
At risk of what?
of falling behind or even dropping out.
Yeah.
And then, being able to offer them personalized help.
Before it's too late.
Exactly. And the book talks about this system, Purdue University's Course Signals.
Oh, interesting.
It uses data from the learning management system.
Okay.
Things like attendance and grades.
To do what?
To, identify students who might be struggling. And then
And then what?
it alerts both the student and the teacher.
So they can, get back on track.
Exactly.
But you know what's even more powerful?
Why?
That kind of early warning system. It isn't just for individual courses.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
We're seeing similar systems, across entire school districts, giving administrators time to intervene.
And provide support.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about streaming data analysis now.
Streaming data analysis. Okay.
The book says it's a total game changer.
A game changer, huh?
But honestly, for those of us who aren't data scientists,
Yeah.
can you explain what makes it so unique?
Okay, well, think of it like this. Streaming data is all about analyzing data as it's generated, in real time.
Okay.
Imagine you're watching a live stream of a sporting event. You're getting updates as the game unfolds, right? Not after it's over.
Oh, okay.
That's streaming data.
So instead of waiting until, the end of the semester to see how a student's doing, right, we can constantly track their progress.
Exactly.
And offer support along the way.
Precisely.
And this technology, it's not just limited to education either.
No, it's everywhere.
Think about how Netflix uses it for recommendations.
Yeah.
Or how social media curates your news feed. Streaming data is everywhere.
But how does this apply to learning, though?
Well, when we apply streaming data to learning,
Yeah.
we can actually track your entire learning journey.
Every step of the way.
Every interaction, every click, it all becomes data.
Wow. It's like a constant assessment.
It is, but the book also talks about this thing called the analogy trap.
Analogy trap. What's that?
It's like when we try to digitize analog concepts, but we don't. Consider the unique possibilities of digital tools.
Oh, okay.
For example, when we digitize a textbook, we might still limit ourselves to a linear progression through the material.
I see. So it's not just about recreating the old in a new format.
Exactly.
It's about using data to reimagine what learning can even be.
Yes. But isn't that what, adaptive learning platforms are already doing?
Well, they are, but the potential is way bigger.
Okay.
With streaming data.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting for you to complete a module or answer questions, we can actually analyze your interactions in real time and adjust the learning path on the fly.
That's incredible. But it also raises questions about how we measure learning if we move away from traditional assessment.
Like quizzes and exams.
Yeah. How do we know if someone is actually learning?
Right. That's a great question. And that actually brings us to another important point.
Okay.
The power of scale.
Scale.
Yeah. In a data-driven world.
Okay.
Think about social media platforms, right?
Okay.
Individual actions, like liking a post.
Or sharing an article.
Yeah, they might not seem like much on their own, but when you look at the data from millions of users, you start to see these
Patterns.
Yeah, these patterns that reveal things about human behavior and like social interaction.
It's like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right?
Exactly.
So how does that apply to learning data?
Imagine you're collecting data from millions of learners around the world.
Yeah.
You could see patterns of collaboration, of knowledge sharing, even emotional responses to learning content.
At a scale we've never seen before.
Exactly.
That's mind-blowing. So what does all this mean for grades then? Do they even matter in this new world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I guess so.
Traditional report cards, they're just snapshots. They give you a limited view.
But with streaming data.
With streaming data, we get a much richer picture, like, of each learner's journey.
It's like we've been looking through a keyhole, right? And now we can open the door and see the entire universe. This is all so fascinating. But how do we even begin to make sense of all this data?
Well, the book talks about data visualization.
Data visualization.
Yeah. Imagine a dashboard that gives you a, 360-degree view of your learning progress.
In real time.
Yeah. You could see how you're interacting with content, how you're collaborating.
It's like a mission control for your own learning. But how do we even create something like that?
Well, the book provides some steps for implementing a data-driven learning system.
Okay.
It starts with a needs analysis.
Okay.
Figuring out what problems you want to solve, what data you even have.
So it's about being strategic.
Exactly.
Okay. But once we've defined our needs, then what?
Then you design your data model and visualizations. How are you going to structure the data? Who's going to use it?
It sounds like a lot of work.
It is. But the potential rewards are huge. We could create a world where learning is truly personalized.
That's amazing. But are there any, downsides to this? Risks we need to be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. That's something we need to talk about. Remember, technology is just a tool. It can be used for good or for
Bad.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to dig into that more after the break.
Sounds good. Yeah, so before the break, we were talking about the potential downsides to this whole data-driven learning thing.
Right. What are some of the things we should be worried about?
Well, one of the big ones is data privacy.
Data privacy.
We're talking about collecting a ton of information about students, incredibly detailed information about their learning habits, their strengths and weaknesses, even their emotional responses to learning content. And, we need to be super careful about how that data is used.
Right. Who has access to it?
Exactly. We don't want this data to be used to, label students or stereotype them.
Or even worse, limit their opportunities.
Exactly.
So how do we protect student privacy then? What are some things we can do?
Well, first off, we need to be totally transparent about what data is being collected, how it's being used. Students should always have the right to know this stuff.
To know what information is being gathered about them.
Yeah, and how it's being analyzed. It's their data, after all.
So they should have control over it.
Exactly. And we need to make sure that the data is only used for legitimate educational purposes.
Not for marketing or anything like that.
No. It shouldn't be sold to third parties or used to create profiles that could be used against students in any way.
Okay, that's good. But what about algorithmic bias? I mean, we've seen this in other areas where algorithms can actually make existing inequalities worse.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge issue. And it's definitely something we need to be very aware of.
How do we prevent that from happening in education then?
Oh, the thing is, algorithms are only as good as the data they're trained on.
Okay.
So if the data reflects existing biases, then the algorithm's probably going to perpetuate those biases.
So garbage in, garbage out, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. So we need to be extremely careful about the data sets we use to train these algorithms.
And we need to be constantly monitoring them to make sure they're not producing unfair or discriminatory results.
Exactly. We can't just assume that, because something is data-driven, that it's automatically objective.
Right.
Or fair.
So we need to be aware of the potential for unintended consequences.
Yeah, and build in safeguards to mitigate those risks.
Okay, that makes sense. So a lot to consider, but I'm still pretty optimistic about all this. I mean, if we can get it right, this could completely revolutionize education, right?
Absolutely. Think about it. Personalized learning paths, tailored to each student's individual needs and goals.
Yeah, that sounds incredible.
It is. Imagine a learning experience that's truly designed for you.
Where you learn at your own pace. You can focus on the things that you're actually interested in.
Exactly. And you get support when and where you need it.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Right. But how do we actually make that happen?
Well, it all starts with having the right infrastructure in place.
Okay.
We need a way to collect, store, and analyze data from all sorts of sources.
Like what?
Like learning management systems, online assessments, even like wearable devices that track things like your heart rate and brain activity.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. Wearable devices. That seems a little, I don't know.
It sounds futuristic, right? But think about the possibilities. We could actually see how students are responding to different learning activities.
In real time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could see if they're engaged, if they're stressed, if they're confused, and then we could use that information to adjust the learning experience accordingly.
That's a lot of data.
It is, but that's where machine learning comes in. We can use algorithms to make sense of all that data.
Right. Find the patterns.
Yeah. And then we can use those patterns to make predictions about student performance, to personalize learning paths, to create a truly individualized learning experience.
Okay, so the system is constantly learning about the student as they learn.
Exactly.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But what about teachers then? Where do they fit into all of this?
That's a question that a lot of people have. And honestly, I think the role of the teacher becomes even more important in a personalized learning environment.
Really? I would have thought the opposite.
No. See, teachers would be freed up from a lot of the administrative tasks that take up so much of their time right now.
Oh, I see.
Things like grading, lesson planning, all that stuff.
So they can spend more time actually teaching.
Exactly. And more importantly, mentoring, guiding, inspiring their students.
So they become more like learning coaches.
Exactly. They use data to understand each student's strengths, weaknesses, and learning preferences.
And then they help them set personalized learning goals, create customized learning paths, and provide that, targeted support along the way.
You got it.
So it's less about telling students what to learn and how to learn it, and more about helping them figure it out for themselves.
Exactly. It's a much more empowering approach to education.
I like that. So data can help us create more personalized learning paths. But can it also help us create more engaging learning experiences?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine a world where textbooks aren't just static pages anymore.
Yeah.
They're dynamic, interactive, they adapt to your reading level, they provide you with extra resources based on your interests.
That'll be amazing.
Right. And we can use data to create simulations and games that make learning fun and immersive.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Like using virtual reality to create realistic learning environments where you can practice skills, without any real-world consequences.
Exactly. The possibilities are really endless.
Okay, I'm sold. But again, we got to remember those challenges and potential pitfalls. Data privacy, algorithmic bias, all that stuff.
You're absolutely right. We can't just get carried away with all the cool stuff and forget about the risks.
So how do we approach this technology responsibly?
Well, I think it starts with having open and honest conversations about the ethical implications.
Yeah, we can't just bury our heads in the sand.
Exactly. And we need to put safeguards in place to make sure that this technology is used to benefit all learners, not just a select few.
That's a really important point. It's not about creating a system that advantages some students at the expense of others. It's about creating a more equitable and empowering learning experience for everyone. Well, this has been a really insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from personalized learning paths to the potential downsides of data-driven education. And honestly, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future of learning. It seems like we're on the verge of a major transformation.
We are, but the success of that transformation depends on our ability to use data responsibly and ethically.
With the learner always at the center.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we're going to take another quick break to gather our thoughts. We'll be back shortly to explore the practical steps you can take to implement data-driven learning in your own life. Okay, so we've talked about all this amazing potential, but I'm sure some of you are thinking, okay, that's great, but what can I actually do with this information?
Well, the book actually gives you a pretty good roadmap for getting started.
Okay, so where do we begin?
It all starts with figuring out your needs.
My needs, okay.
Yeah. Like, what are your actual learning goals? Your strengths, weaknesses. What kind of data do you even have access to?
So it's about being really intentional.
Exactly. Once you have a good understanding of what you're working with, then you can start to look at the tools and technologies that can help you.
Okay, so what are some specific examples of tools or technologies that people can use?
Oh, there are tons out there. A lot of them are free too.
Oh, that's good.
You can use things like learning management systems, Moodle, Canvas, those kinds of things,
Yeah.
to track your progress, or even identify areas where you might need a little extra help.
I see.
And then there are online platforms like Khan Academy, Coursera, that kind of thing.
Right.
They offer those personalized learning paths
Okay.
based on, your individual needs and interests.
Oh, that's cool.
It is. And don't forget about your own data.
My own data.
Yeah. Like a lot of apps and devices, they track your activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can give you some really good insights into your learning habits.
Okay. So I can use this information to identify patterns in my behavior.
Exactly. And then you can tweak your learning routine to get the most out of your study time,
That makes sense. So there's a lot you can do on your own, even without access to a big fancy data system.
Definitely.
But for bigger institutions or organizations who are looking to implement this stuff on a larger scale.
Right.
What are some of the key steps they should be taking?
Well, the book emphasizes starting with a vision, and a good strategy, figure out what your goals are, what are the ethical considerations, and, all the practical stuff, how are you actually going to collect, store, and analyze the data?
It sounds like it takes a lot of planning.
It does,
Okay.
but it's worth it in the end.
Okay, so what about the tech itself? Are there any specific platforms or systems that are better suited for data-driven learning?
Well, the book mentions XAPI.
XAPI.
Yeah, it's like a specification for capturing learning data. It helps different learning systems talk to each other.
Oh, okay. So that way you can actually track and analyze data from a bunch of different sources. That's pretty cool. But what about the actual analysis part? I feel like that's got to be the hardest part, right?
It can be. But there are tools for that too, like machine learning and data visualization.
Mm-hmm.
You can use algorithms to find those patterns in the data and then make predictions about student performance. And then you can use visualization tools to create these dashboards and reports.
To make the data easier to understand.
Exactly.
So it's not just about collecting data. It's about actually using it to make better decisions.
Right.
But in all this, with all this data, how do we make sure we're not losing sight of the individual?
That's such an important question. And the book actually talks about that too. It stresses keeping the learner at the center,
Right.
Data should be used to empower learners, not control them, to create a more engaging learning experience.
Not to standardize education or make everyone the same. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty excited about all of this. This has been an incredible journey exploring the future of learning. And I think we're onto something big here.
I think so too. It's a whole new world of possibilities.
It is. But remember, we have to approach it thoughtfully and responsibly, keeping the learner's best interests at heart. Always.
Couldn't agree more.
So to all of you listening out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time.